it was yesterday morning at the White House, and it was just like a lot of people who are from the emerging field of impact investing. And so it's a really cool space. I think that's just a really interesting area, which is like where I think a lot of investment is starting to head, which is, not only how do we do well as a business, but how can we do well and do good. So those double bottom line businesses are starting to really take off, and the investment community is starting to take notice. So it's really cool. One of the things that I think had a huge impact on me was being the youngest of three, and three boys at that matter. It was a really great experience. I have a middle brother who's one of the most intelligent people I know, who's 5 years older, and I have a brother older than that, about 9 years older than me. So I would say growing up, I kind of just was always accustomed to like always having to push for what I wanted and never getting it. Like having to always just make an argument about why I should get the colored Jolly Rancher I wanted, or why we should watch this on TV. When I'm looking back now on my childhood, it's actually a really interesting question. No one's ever asked me that, but I would say that was such a great experience. It was great to always just have to be kind of pushing your own agenda forward in the face of having two older brothers who were much smarter and much stronger than I was. So it was that was not necessarily an aha moment, but I think when people have asked, like, how do you keep pushing on and keep doing things? It's like, it was a matter of survival in my house. That's kind of how we did things. So that was definitely had a huge, huge impact on me. My environment had so much to do with who I was and how I grew up and what it's ultimately made me successful. But I always wondered if you took me and put me in a much different background, in another country, or in an inner city rough background, would I be where I am today? And really thinking about that more and more and more, and I began to say, no, like, I'm really not that special as an individual. I just happen to have great people around me and great support systems in my life, and it really pushed me to begin to think about what can I do potentially with my own life. Don't come from a very wealthy background, but certainly a background of privilege in the context of most of the world. So what can I do to position myself, in an area where I can begin to give back and try something? So I just decided to go down and teach in the inner city, and see, what I can do. Was 21 and, just wanted to give it a shot and see if I could potentially be a support system and make a difference. I had a beer or two and watched Dangerous Minds and was like, I could do this, As it turns out, it's a lot harder than it is in the movie. I was asked to be the athletic director at a high school that was struggling to get back on its feet, operating out of trailers and things of the like, and we were struggling for everything, to get basketball, to buy uniforms. So we heard about an opportunity to go after an NFL grant and decided to go after it. It was up to $200,000 match, and we just went after that, got that, used that to snowball basically into a $2 million capital project to create the first public football field and track open to the public free of charge in the city of New Orleans. And we've raised all the capital we need. We got 100,000 square feet of turf sitting in a warehouse, and as they're rebuilding the school, we're going to roll out there shortly and put this thing up, and it's going to have a huge impact. It's really about, in our opinion, meeting kids halfway and using this as a method to curtail a lot of crime. And we have some serious crime issues. A lot of people don't know this about New Orleans is that we're a city of population of about 335,000, and we out-murdered Chicago in the first quarter of this past year. Chicago's about 4.5 million city proper, so that's not good. It's largely young kids killing other young kids, and we believe that we'll have a hand in helping to bring those numbers down. There's no blueprint for rebuilding like this, right? It just doesn't really happen. So everyone was kind of scrambling to figure it out from an infrastructure standpoint, on the city-wide level, region-wide level. Schools, all that was trying to figure it out. And we were advocating building a football field and a track when people were struggling to get back into their homes. So initially, people were like, get out of here. We got bigger concerns than a football field and a track. Like, are you serious? Like, the kids are going to school in trailers, and it's a legitimate argument, and we understand it and we're sensitive to it. But we also believe in the power of a public space like this being able to catalyze the community. One of the biggest barriers for people coming back was the school system. People didn't want to move back into New Orleans when the schools were still in trailers. So, and the public spaces that have largely to do with quality of life, they weren't back. So people were hesitant initially, but it was really interesting. When you talk about swimming upstream, I think with crazy ideas or big ideas, swimming upstream is, I don't know if it's necessarily the right word, because it's really difficult at first, right? People are thinking you're insane, like laughing, you walk into a room and it gets quiet because, everybody was just talking about how like insane you are. But then as you begin to, as we began to pull in a few Fortune 500 companies, a few larger donations, people who were beginning to buy into it, it suddenly became a little bit less insane, and swimming upstream became a little bit easier. And now when we talk to people about the idea, people are saying, oh, this is a really good idea, but I don't pay too much to it, just because, I know it was like when we were starting this up, which people were like, get out of here. Like, this is just not ever going to happen. Like, this is a stupid idea. But it's been really powerful. We have people who are advocating for soccer camps in refugee camps. And it's the same kind of story. They're saying, this is a refugee camp. We have bigger concerns than teaching soccer. And they've been able to pull from some of our experiences and some of the statistics that we've been able to find to really use this to show that, no, this really is important. And it has a serious impact on people's lives. So we were really just getting off the ground and taking advantage of a lot of the free resources that are out there. Twitter, I didn't even know what Twitter was. Reaching out to social media groups to get them involved, to help us out to run our Twitter handle, to get our Facebook page up, and to get a website up, and all these other things. And I was sitting in a coffee shop, much like the one I'm in now, and we had raised like $4,000. We'll call that my family and friends round. Just like called everyone I knew, and it's like, you have to donate to this. I need your help. And they're like, you're trying to raise. At that point, we were trying to raise $200,000 in about 35 days. So people are probably like, here's some money. Like, good luck. This is never going to happen. And we just kept beating the drum. And I was exhausted. I was teaching 6 out of 7 classes during the day and trying to do this at night and on my lunch break, and just ragged. And got a phone call from a corporate spokeswoman for the Nike Corporation, who was like, oh, we saw your Facebook page. We think the project's really cool. We're going to wire over $100,000 tomorrow morning. And I was like, what? Like, this is nuts. Like, this is totally crazy. We didn't even have a bank. I'm not even kidding. We didn't even have a bank account set up at that time. So I had to go out early that morning to a bank and and be like, I need a bank set up now. Like, I need a routing number immediately. And they routed over, the money that morning. So that was kind of our, a great point and a tremendous risk for the Nike Corporation and just very grateful that they gave us the opportunity, and it really helped to leverage us into a lot of other places, to now be like, we're validated, we have someone big on board, and then we got the NFL on board, and it was like, we're working with Nike, we're working with the NFL, and it was, it's nuts. I mean, we work with Nike, we work with the NFL now, we work with Google, we work with Chevron, Shell, Procter & Gamble. It's ridiculous, and it's all very surreal. I'll give you the flip side of that, because I very rarely like to talk about the successes of this, because I think that as entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs, sometimes we like to paint pictures. We can look back and romanticize about our experiences. I don't know if that's necessarily very helpful to the ecosystem. You have an idea and the job sucks. It's tough, right? You have to fight for everything that you do. And there are a lot of days that are very dark. And for a while, we were stagnant at about $1 million. I mean, for a couple months, we just couldn't move off that mark. And I was having one of those days that most entrepreneurs, if they're honest, will tell you about, where you're just like, this might be time to fold it up. It's just like totally downtrodden, my head in my hands. And one of my students walked by and she said, what's the matter? And I said, told her what was going on. I said, we haven't raised any money in a while, and we got so much, we have basically another $1 million to go, and there's just no way in hell we're ever going to get there, and I just don't know what I'm, just don't know about this anymore. And she put her hand on my shoulder, and she looked me dead in the face, and she said, baby, nobody told you to do this to begin with. And it was one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard, which is so true, right? She's like, no one told you to do this, you brought it on yourself. And I think that's something that we can potentially lose sight of as entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs as well. It's typically we're going into communities or areas that people aren't asking for our help. They're not saying, come in, help us. We're going in and we think something must get done, so we take it upon ourselves to do it. And I think that's really important to keep in context when you're working on something. And I lost sight of that for a little bit, and it was very, very nice to have it put back into context, which I was like, she's right. Like, I said I wanted to do this, so now I need to get it done. And very powerful words from a very intelligent 16-year-old. One of the best books I've ever read is called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. It's really interesting. It's about a creative director who worked for Hallmark, and basically every time that they had success with a card, they wanted to replicate it 1,000 times, right? Like the big business model of it, which is that, okay, that was successful, let's make it more successful and do it again. When in reality, it's the rechanging and the constant revisioning process that actually makes a lot of things successful. And we fell into that trap as well with some of our fundraising techniques and some of our marketing materials and all of that. And as entrepreneurs, we're like, wait, that worked with 3 people. Let's try it with 3,000. And if it doesn't work, we get so down. We're all panic. Like we just ride the roller coaster as entrepreneurs. And I think that even in the business sector, there's this constant butting of the heads. I think of creative change and stability and profit. And I think that they're one and of the same. And building an environment that's stable, that also involves a lot of change, that's open to new ideas, is something that's really easy to pay lip service to and to say. But it's very difficult to do, and one of the things that we really tried to do a lot of was constant whiteboarding and just really not holding any judgment on any ideas, and that's really difficult to do, especially as kind of a smart ass myself. It is a difficult process, right? You want to be like, that's really stupid, like we shouldn't do that. But I think as we kind of bought into that process, I've learned a couple of things. One, it's all about being creative, right? The more creative you can be with young people, the better off you're going to be. You have to get kids to invest, right, in your idea. And if anything, I'm a firm believer that teachers make the best entrepreneurs, and I'll push back on anyone who disagrees with me, especially inner city teachers, because they are constantly selling something that people don't want. So like every single day, they are pitching they're pitching people to buy into the idea that they're trying to get across. And I think that skill set is an invaluable skill set to master. One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I'm trying to keep in context, is where are we heading economically, and how that relates to philanthropy. And I really think that we're starting to see an emergence of impact investing, both in the nonprofit and philanthropic space, but also in the business space. And those two worlds are just coming head to head. People in my generation, they want to do well, right? But they also want to do good. And I think that those double bottom line businesses are going to start emerging more and more and more. And how we evaluate what we do is starting to change. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I really encourage people to kind of look at the economic horizon. And I'm kind of glad that you're recording this conversation, because hopefully in a couple of years, when we have a huge per capita of businesses that are doing really well and doing really good at the same time, you can say, I said it back in 2011.